श्री Jnaneshwari. Shri Ganeshaya Namaha. Shri Saraswatyai Namaha. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Shri Gopal Krishnaya Namaha. Chapter 5 Sannyas Yoga continued. Shloka number 21. He whose mind is not attached to external objects finds joy within himself. With his mind immersed in meditation of Brahman, he enjoys eternal bliss. Since he does not neglect his real self, he does not come under the sway of the senses, and so he does not enjoy the sense objects. Is there anything surprising in this? As his mind is full of boundless joy of the self, he does not turn to the external sense organs. Tell me, if the chakora bird has feasted on the sweet rays of the moon from the plate of lotus petals, will he want to chew desert sand? So if a person who has attained to the bliss of the self forsakes sense objects, is there any need to talk about it? Now think very clearly, as a matter of curiosity, about those who are dazzled by the sensuous pleasures. 22. For the enjoyments which arise from sense contacts are indeed sources of sorrow. They have, O Arjuna, a beginning and an end. In them, a wise man does not rejoice. Just as a hungry person eats even husk, so those who do not know the self take delight in sense objects. Or just as the deer, oppressed by thirst, forgets real water and being deluded runs towards the mirage, mistaking it for water, so those who have not known the self and are ignorant of bliss, they alone think sense objects to be delectable. To say that sense objects can give pleasure is idle chatter. Just as a poisonous root is called mahur, meaning sweet, or the planet Mars is called auspicious, mangal, or that the mirage is called water. Likewise, misleading is the talk of happiness from the sense objects. Tell me, can the shadow of the cobra's hood give a cooling sensation to the mouse? Just as the bait is good, so long as the fish does not swallow it, so is the contact with sense objects. Know this to be undoubtedly true. Know therefore that whatever seems like sensual pleasure is pain from beginning to end. But the ignorant man cannot refrain from it. As they do not know this secret, they cannot but take to them. Tell me, do the insects in pus and mud feel nausea for them? They find pleasure in that pain. They are like frogs in the muck of sense objects and fish in the muddy water of sense enjoyments. Then how can they leave it? If all beings were to regard sense objects with dispassion, who will then be caught in the cycle of birth and death? There will not be any imperfection if everyone gave up the desire of sense objects. And then, will not the very term worldly existence become redundant? Therefore, since they take the pain proceeding from sense enjoyment as pleasure, they make this ignorance, which is wholly false, seem true. But reflection shows that these sense objects are wholly bad. Therefore, do not make the mistake of running after them. Men of dispassion avoid them like poison, and being desireless, they do not like pain in the form of sensuous pleasure. 23. Whoever can endure here itself, before leaving the body, the rush of desire and anger, is a yogi, a happy man. The men of wisdom do not even talk about the sense objects, since in their very body they have triumphed over their body consciousness. Then they are not even conscious of the external objects, because they have found real happiness within. They, however, enjoy it differently, not as the birds kiss the fruits. At that time, they even forget that they are enjoyers. The state of mind which arises at that time destroys the veil of ego sense, and they grasp the bliss and hold it in firm embrace. Then they become one with it, as water mixing with water does not remain separate, or as with the disappearance of the wind in the sky, their separate existence ceases. Then bliss alone remains in its own form at the time of that union. When the talk of dualism ceases and only one remains, then who is there to witness this oneness? 24. He who has happiness, joy, and light within, that yogi becomes one with Brahman and finds eternal bliss. 25. In Brahman, the sages find bliss, with their sins destroyed and doubts cleared, who after controlling their minds devote themselves to the good of all beings. I regard the yogis who full of bliss are immersed in the self as pure images of beatitude. They are replicas of joy and sprouts of happiness, and they are the playgrounds of supreme knowledge. Now listen what Lord Krishna said to Arjun. O Arjun, those who dive deep into the deep waters of eternal bliss, they remained steady there and became one with it. And since they saw within themselves the world in the clear light of wisdom, we have to admit that they became one with the Supreme Self while living. This bliss of self is sublime, eternal, and limitless. Only those who are free from desire become qualified for it. This happiness is reserved for the great sages and is shared by men of dispassion, and it ever fructifies in those who have no doubt about the existence of the self. 26. Beatitude of God is near to the austere souls who are subdued in mind and are free from desire and anger, and who have known the self. Those who have withdrawn their minds from the sense objects and subdued them, they do not wake up again from the state of bliss. Know that they are the persons who have become the Supreme Brahman itself. I shall now tell you how they become Brahman while remaining in the body. 27. Shutting out all external sense contacts, fixing the gaze between the eyebrows, and equalizing the outer and inner breaths, moving within the nostrils. 28. The sage, who is fully intent on liberation, with his senses, mind, and intellect subdued, and who is free from desire, fear, and anger, is indeed ever free. He who shuts out the sense objects by means of dispassion and fixes the mind within his body and turning his gaze inwards inside the middle of the eyebrows where all the three nadis meet, they turn the mind on the Chidakash after equalizing the prana and apana. As when the river Ganges, after collecting the drain waters, meets the sea, it is not possible to separate each of them from the rest. So when the mind is merged in the Akash by the restraint of the pran, all thoughts of diverse desires cease by themselves. Then the cloth of mind, which displays the picture of the world's existence, is torn, even as there is no reflection when the lake dries up. When the mind itself ceases, how can the ego sense and the rest survive? Thus he experiences Brahman and becomes one with it even while living. 29. One attains to peace, having known me as the enjoyer of the sacrifices and austerities, as the great Lord of the world, and as the friend of all beings. As I said before, some become Brahman in their very bodies by following the path of yoga. After climbing the difficult cliff of spiritual discipline and crossing the sea of yogic practice, they transcended the worldly existence. After becoming sinless, they took the measure of the world and became truly of the nature of Brahman. Then Arjun said, Lord, you already know what I am going to ask you, so kindly explain whatever you have said. This path of yoga is easy to follow, like crossing the river of a ford instead of swimming. Though this yoga is attainable after a long time, it is easier than Sankhya Yoga for weaklings like me. Therefore, recount it to me once more so that I can grasp it, even if it leads to repetition. So Lord Krishna said, Has this path appealed to you so much I shall be glad to repeat it, since you are so eager to hear it. O Arjun, you will listen well and practice what you hear. Then why should I hesitate to explain it to you? Already the Lord had the heart of a mother talking to her dear son. How can one fathom that strange affection? One can call it the rain of tender sentiment or the unfoldment of wonderful love. How can I praise enough that compassionate gaze of Sri Hari? Then Lord Krishna continued, Listen, my friend, O Arjun. By whatever means I can enlighten your mind, I shall use those means to explain to you about this yoga. That is, what is its use and who are qualified to practice it. Whatever is proper in this regard, I shall tell you. Listen with attention. This statement forms the subject matter of the next chapter. Nyandev, the disciple of Nivritti, will describe in clear terms Lord Krishna's instruction how to attain this yoga without giving up contact with this world. With this, we complete chapter 5. Om Shri Krishna Arpanamastu. Hari Om.